If you're ready to upgrade your Oakensoul 1-bar build to something a lot more powerful, then take a look at this easy mode Arcanist build that pulls over 110k DPS, did I mention without using Trials gear. The Necrom chapter is about to drop, and the Arcanist class is set to be the easiest DPS class in the game. Note that I said the easiest, not the most powerful. That's yet to be seen. But for players who want to get into endgame rating, you can easily pull over 100k DPS on the Arcanist class with a rotation that's not much harder than an Oakensoul build and with no Trials gear necessary. This class is definitely going to be a game changer for ESO, so let me show you how this all works and let's jump right into the build. Alright everybody, here we are back on the Arcanist with a new build here coming into the Necrom chapter. Thought it would be really interesting to see how you could do an easy DPS build on the Arcanist. What we've come up with here is a stamina focused build. Like I said, very easy rotation to do damage, tons of damage potential actually, and you don't even need Trials gear to hit over 100k DPS on the Arcanist, which I think is pretty incredible. So let's go ahead and dive into this super simple build and check out how it works. Starting with the buff stats here. Self-buffed, and then we'll look at the trial dummy stats as well. But you can see we have about 18k health, 32k max stamina is pretty good. Tons of stamina recovery on the Arcanist. Obviously, we built that into our food as well. But the stamina recovery is very nice. Good damage and crit chance overall, so you can see those are kind of the base setup. Just proc everything here on the Trials dummy so you can kind of see what your max stats would look like. About 35k max stamina, 2400 stam recovery, almost 8,000 or so weapon and spell damage, and getting close to that 60% crit chance mark, which is really, really good. Now, obviously, you want 64 points into stamina. We are going to be stamina focused on this build. For the Mundus Stone, we're running the Thief Mundus. It's going to give us the most possible critical chance. Definitely what you want on this build. With Arcanist, it's very easy to hit the cap for crit damage. So I think, putting as much as you can into critical chance makes sense, especially when you get with more optimized groups. Now, speaking of that, if you want to sort of optimize race for damage, I definitely think Dark Elf is going to be the way to go. Like I said, you're going to be very close, if not over the critical damage cap, so Khajiit doesn't make quite as much sense. But the nice thing about Dark Elf is you're going to get max magicka and max stamina. We are going to use both types of abilities. And then you've got the weapon and spell damage passive, of course, which is going to be scaling very well at the top end. I don't think I mentioned the food. The stamina recovery that you saw there is definitely from the Lava Foot soup. I do recommend that, especially as you're starting out with the Arcanist. Stamina sustain is kind of an issue early on, especially as you're leveling. So the more stamina recovery you can get on this build, the better. This is a really great option. Another similar option, though not quite as powerful, would be something like Dubious Cameron Throne. That's going to give you stamina health and stamina recovery, so that's another cheap option you can try out on this build as well. Finally, in terms of the potions, you have some options here. I think you could start out with basic stamina potions, and that's completely fine. Eventually, and especially if you're struggling with sustain, you could switch over to something like Tri-Stat potions, which are going to give you stamina and health back. That is going to be useful as you can cast a lot of magicka skills on the Arcanist. And then for parsing, if you really want to max out your potential damage, something like the Minor Heroism potions. These right now are just showing up as stamina potions, but they do give Minor Heroism and stamina recovery. So this is actually an amazing option for the Arcanist class. If you're interested in this, I will have the recipe in the written guide. You can check that out in the link down in the description and the pinned comment. That said, let's go ahead and jump into the gear sets next, where things get really interesting. Like I said, you don't need Trials gear on this basic Arcanist setup, and the damage is still pretty incredible. So starting with our 5-piece set on the body here, Deadly Strike is going to be one of the best sets in the game for Arcanists of all, stamina, magicka, solo, group builds. Whatever you want, this really is going to help you maximize your damage because, as you can see, the 5-piece there increases your damage over time and channeled abilities damage by 15%. Almost everything in the Arcanist toolkit, especially the Fatecarver beam, is going to fit under one of those categories, either dots or channeled skills. So this works really well as your main offensive set. Now, I know some people get kind of thrown off when they see this because technically, yes, it's a PvP set, but don't forget you can buy this on Guild Traders. It's sold very frequently. And if you get just the body pieces, I think it's pretty cheap to pick up as well. Now this is a medium armor set, which is going to be ideal for the passives and the damage you can do on this build. And I just want as many Divine's traits as possible. So I'm running 5 pieces on the body here. The chest, the shoulders, the waist, the hands, and the legs here, all max stamina, like I said, with Divines as our trait. Now our second 5-piece set is also a damage set. This is actually going to fit on our back bar, and it's going to be the Pillar of Nirn set. Let me actually bar swap so you can see the complete bonus here. Now, Pillar of Nirn is a dungeon set, but if you are interested in DPS builds, this is one of the best damage sets you can get in the game still currently. Actually works really good on stamina builds because it is medium armor, because of the stamina bonus. But you can see the amazing proc damage here, over 24,000 bleed damage over 10 seconds. That's unbuffed currently, so this does a lot of damage. Also, I really like putting this on as a back bar weapon. We will definitely be going to the back bar at least once every 10 seconds, so it's really easy to proc. As far as the pieces here, I'm running the two-handed greatsword. You can run, any two-handed weapon really that you want. Greatsword does get a little bit of passive weapon and spell damage, which is nice. The main thing here is you do want infused with a weapon and spell damage glyph. That's going to maximize your stats there. And then, like I said, 1 piece on the body, so we've got the Pillar of Nirn boots, max stamina, Divines on that one. Then 2 pieces on the jewelry. We've got 2 Pillar of Nirn rings. Bloodthirsty is a trait here. Weapon and spell damage is the glyph there, and you're good to go on your second 5-piece set. Now, even more damage we have on the front bar using our Black Rose daggers. Now, these don't have to actually be perfected. Perfected bonus on the Black Rose daggers is a little bit overkill, I think. You really don't need the extra stamina recovery on this build. Point being, you can get just the regular Black Rose daggers from normal Black Rose Prison, and this is going to add a ton of damage to your build here. You can see the 2-piece bonus here when we use Blade Cloak, which is basically Deadly Cloak. For this particular build, this 2-piece set is going to reduce our damage taken and increase our damage done by 6%. So this really does help to stack up the damage on the Arcanist class, especially those big juicy beams that we're going to have, as well as our ultimate, all of our other damage skills, and this is going to stack with some of the other damage buffs that we get from our sets as well. You might have seen this in passing. 1-piece monster set here. Slimecraw is going to be the ideal monster set for you to run here as a 1-piece. This will have the highest critical chance value that you can get. I'm running this medium as well with Divines. And then for our mythic here, we're actually using the Velothi Mage's Amulet, which I believe is now in its final form. Now, true, this is not as powerful as it has been in the past, but I did want to point out how amazingly good this still is on the Arcanist class in particular. Now, I think it's going to be good on any class that has a lot of channeled abilities. But the thing about this is this increases your damage done by 15%, right? The minor force is not a big deal. We're going to get that from our skills anyways. But a 15% bonus on all of our damage. And the Arcanist class is going to have the least problem of all the classes in using this because this mythic reduces your light and heavy attack damage. Well, on the Arcanist, you have a 5-second beam skill, you're not going to be light attacking anyways. So I did just want to point out that with this mythic still, even though it has been nerfed on the PTS, it's still going to be extremely effective for Arcanist builds if you want to push that little bit of extra DPS. Other damage mythics honestly aren't as effective on the Arcanist. For example, the mythic Kilt, because you have so much critical damage built into your passives anyways, the raw damage that you get from the Velothi Amulet is going to be really, really strong. So that is the setup. Again, we've got Deadly Strike on the body along with Slimecraw helmet, Black Rose daggers on the front bar, and then we've got the Pillar of Nirn set back bar. That's going to be a 2-handed greatsword, Pillar of Nirn boots, and then 2 pieces of jewelry, along with the Velothi Mage's Amulet. Go ahead and jump into the skills here quickly, show you what I'm using. Again, on the stamina focus Arcanist, of course, we have Exhausting Fatecarver. This is going to be our main damage skill. This is going to be buffed by Deadly Strike, buffed by all of our champion points. So this ends up being anywhere between like 35 to 40% of your total damage from this skill. It is amazing considering that it also is AoE. You can hit multiple targets with this thing, but the problem is you have to know how to use it. You have to know how to build up your stacks of Crux, because without stacks, it's just not nearly as powerful. You can see how this works here on the tooltip. Each Crux that you consume with this ability is going to increase your damage done by 33% and the duration by 0.3. So basically with 3 stacks, that's 100% bonus damage and 1 extra second of duration. So that's definitely how you want to use it. as much as possible, 3 stacks of Crux, and then cast it. This, by the way, comes from Herald of the Tome. That's going to be our second skill here in the skill line. Now, since Fatecarver consumes Crux, we also need a skill, obviously, that's going to build Crux. And that's going to be our second skill called Cephaliarch's Flail. Now, they did buff this recently, and I'm very glad that they did. I did leave some feedback saying that this skill could do more, and it definitely does. So each cast, you're going to build up 1 Crux. You also are going to deal bonus damage up to 100% damage, in fact, on enemies with less than 50% health. You also debuff targets, causing them to take 5% increased damage by your abilities, which is really nice. And you're going to get the heal now as well every time you cast this, which is also really nice. This ends up being like about a 10k critical heal each time you cast it, which is actually really good. Obviously, the more damage you're doing, so the more buff stats you have, or the more buffs you have from group members, the more healing it's going to do. So that is really nice for utilities. Now, this isn't the only Crux generating skill. We actually have one more on the back bar, so we'll get to that in a second. But some other abilities here that we want to use. Deadly Cloak, obviously we're using the Black Rose Dual Wield. Deadly Cloak does a ton of damage. Plus, don't forget, this gives you major evasion for 20 seconds, so that reduces your damage taken from area effect damage by 20%. And we also get minor evasion as a class passive on the Arcanist. So even more AoE damage reduction means this build is also very tanky. It's going to be great for surviving more difficult content with your group. And then we also have Barb Trap. This comes from the Fighters Guild skill line. Now, if you were paying attention, you saw that the Mage's Amulet Mythic, they did end up putting Minor Force onto that mythic item. I don't really think that that's a great move for that particular set, because for one thing, Barb Trap is just such a good ability. Most classes, even Magicka-based DPS builds, are going to run Barb Trap because it's such a powerful damage over time, but also for the Hemorrhaging status effect, which does probably one of the highest damage numbers for status effects in the game next to Burning. Don't forget too that Arcanists also have a class passive for increased status effect chance and status effect damage. So you really do want as many status effect providing skills on your Arcanist build as possible if you're going for max damage. So yes, I know the Minor Force is redundant. It really doesn't matter because Barb Trap is just so good otherwise. You also get nice Fighters Guild passives, so yeah. And then speaking of Fighters Guild passives, Camouflage Hunter. Passively, this is going to give us Major Savagery and Prophecy, so that's more crit chance, which is always good. And then Minor Berserk when facing enemies from the flank. Finally, sort of a passive ultimate here on the front bar, Flawless Dawnbreaker. You can use this if a fight is about to end and you don't have enough for our Arcanist ultimate, then sure, go ahead and burn this off. But this also gives you a nice passive weapon and spell damage from the Fighters Guild passives. That's the Slayer passive. So you can see with 3 Fighters Guild abilities on my front bar, that's 9% bonus weapon and spell damage. That's really good for boosting our total DPS. Back bar here really quick. Remember, we're using that 2-handed back bar, so we've got a couple of 2H skills here, starting with Stampede. And the purpose of Stampede is really just to proc our back bar glyph. So that extra weapon and spell damage, really, really important. Make sure you maintain this for the full duration and recast it before it goes down, just so you can make sure to maintain that buff. And then we are combining this with Carve. Carve is another very powerful damage over time effect. It also gives you a nice shield, so it is helpful for survivability. But again, just the dot here is very nice. Another Arcanist dot here, in this case, Fulminating Rune. This comes from Herald of the Tome. This is our last skill, and I like one of the changes that they made here recently. They actually made Fulminating Rune scale with your lowest max resource. So in the case of this build where I'm a Stamina Arcanist, this is going to cost my other resource. It's going to cost Magicka. So this is very helpful with sustain. You can see the damage numbers here, very similar to Barb Trap, but you also get an AoE explosion, which is really nice. But this is even better for, crowds and AoE situations because it's going to damage nearby enemies. To the rune, it also has this secondary explosion of frost damage, and you also have the rune break synergy. So even more damage, and actually 3 allies can activate that extra damage. So this becomes increasingly good in group content. So definitely worth making use of on the DPS build. Now running Camouflage Hunter again, that's just to get the passive savagery on the back bar as well as the front bar. And like I said, this is going to open up some options for better potions. You can run, heroism potions if you want, tri-stat potions, because you have your 2 basic buffs taken care of. The other basic buff obviously is Brutality and Sorcery. That's going to come from Inspired Scholarship. This is the second to last ability from Herald of the Tome. This one actually deals bonus magic damage, which is pretty interesting, and it generates 1 crux if you have none already. So this basically means that we're always at sort of a default of 1 crux. We only need to build up 2 more to fully charge up our Fatecarver, which is really nice. And finally, the ultimate here is going to be Languid Eye. This is a very powerful damage over time effect. Every 0.5 seconds, the beam increases its damage by 7%. Remember, this is also going to be buffed by our primary damage set, which is the Deadly Strike set as well. So that is the basic setup here. Really quickly, let me show you sort of a simple rotation. Let's start with buffs. So Inspired Scholarship is your main damage buff. Then you're going to follow that up on the front bar with Deadly Cloak into Barb Trap. Bar swap back and then hit all of your dots. So there's Stampede. Make sure you hit Carve at least twice at first to charge that up. There's Fulminating Rune. And then if you have your ultimate, go ahead and use that. Back to the front bar, we're going to cast 2 of the tentacle skills. Cephaliarch's Flail, that's going to charge up our Crux. And then you're going to go into the Fatecarver Beam. So that is the rotation here. Let me show you one more time. So again, make sure you're buffed here with your damage buff. Your front bar skills are Deadly Cloak and then Barb Trap. On the back bar, all of your dots here. Stampede, Carve, Fulminating Rune. On the front bar, 2 flails into your Fatecarver. Now it's fully buffed. You're going to get the full effect of the damage there. And once that's done, you can just recast your Deadly Cloak, recast your Barb Trap, and then go ahead and refresh your dots on the back bar. So that's kind of the rotation. Obviously use your potion and your ultimate when that is ready. And always remember to charge up Fatecarver all the way to 3 crux if you can. All right, so that's the basic rotation. If you need more help with that, make sure to check out the written guide. I'll have the rotation there step by step so you can look through that and practice it. Now that is just the most basic version. I will show you at the end that if you decide to do a more dynamic rotation, that is, recasting your abilities not on a set rotation, but as they actually are about to fall off, using your buff timers and trackers, you'll be able to increase your DPS a little bit more. That's always an option if you are good with keeping track of your abilities. With that being said, let's jump into the champion points here next. Now, I will have these listed on the written guide as well. We'll have these broken down for you for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 champion points. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Within the green tree, pretty basic here. We've got Steed's Blessing, Treasure Hunter, Rationer, and then Liquid Efficiency. For the blue tree, our main damage stars are going to be Biting Aura, Thaumaturge, Wrathful Strikes. 4th slotted star is going to be Exploiter. Then for the red tree here, we've got Rejuvenation for the extra recovery, Boundless Vitality for a little bit of extra health. Those are the main 2, and then I think the other 2 really are completely up to you. I've used Bloody Renewal and Siphoning Spells in this case because it's really helpful for sustaining some of our resources, especially for running through content quickly, so you might want to consider that as well. But that is about it. If you're curious about the outfit style, this is actually a costume. You can earn this. This is one of the earnable rewards from the Necrom chapter. It's called the Fate Scryer costume, and you basically get this by completing all of the major quest achievements in the Necrom chapter. Alright everybody, with that said, that's going to wrap up this easy Arcanist DPS build. If you enjoyed this or you found it informative, do me a favor and crush that like button. It absolutely helps out the channel and lets YouTube know to share this video with others. And as I mentioned, there is a written guide linked down below in the description and the pinned comment over there. I will have things like alternate sets, alternate skills, CP breakdowns for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, as well as more information on the Velothi Amulet mythic item. So make sure to check that out if you have any questions. Other than that, I will have many more builds on the way, including Arcanist builds for the Necrom chapter, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not already. Check out our YouTube membership for even more exclusive content, and as always, thanks again for watching. Hope you're doing well, stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.